Hello and welcome, everyone. If you're here for the informational question and answer session about our fall movement trauma healer program, training program, then you are in the right place. I always joke that as somebody who's taught online, in various academic settings, I always want to make sure that people are where they want to be, and are in the right space that they want to be in. So welcome to all of you that are joining us right now. As we've done in our previous webinars, if you want to just introduce yourself, say hello in the chat by letting us know where you're coming from in the world right now, what kind of healing work you're engaging in, or what's your sort of passion around healing and that connection to movement space or just in general, and your pronouns. So feel free to introduce yourself that way in the chat. And we're going to give a few minutes for other folks to join in this space with us. This will be recorded, just to let you all know. So the video screen portion of this session is going to be recorded, and that is so because we're going to go over so much of what the program is and how folks can engage with it. This is really going to be something then that if you know somebody or somebody had to miss this, there'll be a way to kind of understand the comprehensive overview of this program. So while we're waiting to get started, why don't we just do our team introductions. This is exciting. This is our first team space together, all three of us. So I'll just start with myself briefly. Those of you that have joined it for any of the previous webinars will likely have seen me. My name's Teresa Mateos or Teresa Mateos. I go by both in a bicultural identifying way. My pronouns are she, her, but I'm also fine with they, them. And I am co-founder and project director of TRACC, which is who is hosting this. We're hosting this session and we're hosting the training program. That's trauma response and crisis care for movements. And so our mission and aim is really to be able to support movements by helping to train and equip professionals to learn better how to understand the dynamics of healing in that context, or healing for activists and organizers in general, as well as providing community support as needed when it arises that there might be either an urgent need or just general community support in terms of education and information when we talk about things like movement trauma, when we talk about some of the dynamics that we talked about even in our introductory webinar series. What do all those things mean and how do we help folks unpack that, both professionals in the healing field and then folks in the community at large. So generally that's what we do, and I'm excited to be here with all of you, as well as two of our new team members and staff members for TRACC, Uma and Enrique. So Uma, will you introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. My name is Uma. So good to be with you all. I use she, hers, and I'm based in Boston. And a lot of my experience has been around survivor support work and anti-violence, and also working with other QTPOC folks and supporting organizing here in Boston. And I got connected to TRACC when we were doing the COVID community care work, and really excited to be with you all as the network, the Healer Network coordinator.
Thank you, Uma. Enrique, will you introduce yourself to everyone?
Sure, my name is Enrique. I use they, them, theirs pronouns. I'm based in Philly, and I am the media coordinator for TRACC. So I hope to manage our social media and share some of our story with you all, and help the resources that we have reach people who need them. So glad to be with you all this evening.
Thank you so much for being here. I forgot you're on East Coast time, so it is already evening. We have people showing up from all over the country. So we're in the afternoon to evening time zone for everyone. Also, as I've been learning how to use this webinar software for Zoom, I've been able to start to learn how to do polls. So I'm super excited about this. We did this poll at the end of the last webinar, which was around sort of finding your role in movement landscape. But I think this is also helpful. We may have some folks that weren't part of that conversation, and just helpful for all of us to get a feel for where people are right now. This question is, what is your previous experience with movement trauma and healer work in social movements? And I'm going to allow the panelists to vote, which means we all get to participate. So I'll leave a few moments for that. Just read through and click your answers. And seeing so many wonderful people show up and joining us, and also so lovely to see so many names that, so many of you that have come throughout the webinar series that are joining us today to be part of this conversation and to learn more about the training program for the fall. So seeing the answers beginning to populate. Probably so far the largest number of people is folks that would identify as being a healing provider with limited experiences in movement space, which sounds about right. I mean, I'm very, we'll talk about this a little throughout the training program, and we've talked about it through the webinar series some, but people, there's a wide continuum, right, of folks that have experience and background. And we even noticed from our webinar series that people were coming from across a continuum, from folks that were already doing work on the front lines, literally that day, that week, to folks that were just, were in a healing profession and wanted to learn more. And I would say, somewhere in that continuum, definitely everybody is welcome to join the training. I would say that a lot of the training material also was created with the idea of being able to help bridge folks that maybe are in that category with the limited to no experience. And as well, there's stuff to learn in there that hopefully could be helpful for all, because we have such a wide set of teachers from across community providing such a density of sort of their various different backgrounds and understandings. I feel like a constantly life learner. I feel like when we're in spaces of learning, that it really always is a co-learning and co-teaching space. That's really an ethic that comes from my other nonprofit organization that I co-lead, which is the Mystic Soul Project. One of our rule of life is co-teaching and co-learning as a principle, which really means that even when we're in learning space, we don't make the assumption either as teacher or as learner that somebody has all of the expertise and therefore is the person that knows everything, and therefore the rest of us are people that don't know anything, right? Creating this community of learning, and as we'll talk about a little later, the Healer Network is really about the fact that we have a lot to learn from each other. Okay, so I'll share the results on the screen for what we got sort of so far. And we have, again, there's like a real cross section of folks, and particularly in folks that are on this call right now and have replied, it's pretty across the board. People from no experience to folks that consider themselves both an organizer and a healer in movement spaces, or just a healer in movement spaces. So it's kind of fun to see that there's a wide cross section right now of who's here and their level of engagement. So what we're going to do is the first maybe 30 minutes or so of our time, maybe a little bit longer, I'm going to spend going over the basics, just sort of introduction, a little bit more about TRACC, into the program that we're running in the fall, some more details around the sort of frequently asked questions of how the program runs, how it's going to be organized, what it's going to look like in terms of a learning experience, and talking about a little bit about some of the content and how you'll access some of the materials, what the learning portals look like. So hopefully a good overview. Once we get into the PowerPoint slide share mode, which I'm going to go into in a moment, I won't be able to see the chat, but Uma and Enrique will give me any kind of questions that come up as we go throughout that might be relevant to a slide that we're on. And then once I'm done with that piece, there will be plenty of time for us to just kind of open it up to all the additional questions beyond what I've gone over, or any other details. So I'm going to move into screen share. And go into my PowerPoint. All right, so Again, informational Q&A on the Fall Movement Trauma Healer and Training Program. You're in the right place if that's what you're here for. So the overview, I'm going to give you a little intro to TRACC and the training program, talk a little bit about what it is and who it's for, what are the core dimensions of learning, what is the core program content, how do I connect with other classmates and teachers, what about tech and accommodations, what will learners come away with on completion, and how does this connect to our wider Healer Network community building? So we'll get through a little bit of all of that. I'd like to start here because even throughout our initial training series, we didn't get to talk that much about what TRACC is and where we came from. So as this is a TRACC project, this program, it felt really important to talk about the background of TRACC in specific. Obviously, that moves in a much larger continuum of healing in movement, which has come throughout time before anything like the TRACC project and continues to present. There's a wide and deep lineage of healing in movement that looks like many different things and has many different names. But this is really just to talk about the story of TRACC as a project and the vision for TRACC. So in November of 2016, very timely and likely not really accidentally around the previous election cycle for the presidency, TRACC began really as a conversation. First, a conversation with myself and a colleague, Zachary Moon, where we started to talk about what would it look like to build a program of training and education and crisis response team building out of that training and education for movement trauma care in a landscape in which we were seeing this increasing rise in intensity of the landscape of social movements, the need for movement response in a way that was really in many ways trajectory building to the moment that we're living into now, even though we couldn't have visualized it in its fullness or envisioned it in its fullness, but that in which we were seeing increased need for this kind of healing care on the front lines of movements. And often this gap between communities that were often in need of that care, that maybe didn't have access to the resources where they locally were, as well as well-intentioned professionals across fields of healing that often wanted to show up and support, but felt limited in their knowledge and the level to which they were equipped to be able to support the trauma and the distress that was happening in movements. And that led to a series of conversation gatherings with academics, healers, activists. First, a gathering in October 2018, and beginning to kind of workshop some of the content, information, and conversation that really built into the training program that we're starting in the fall. To get feedback and reflections and input from folks from various spheres that were engaged with movement and with healing. And then the second healing gathering, which happened the following spring in April 2019, where we were really beginning to refine some of that content, really get a little bit more in depth with folks that seemed more invested in the project and potentially being involved and engaged in leadership roles. And being able to refine also some of the content in the ways we were talking about movement trauma. And again, more refinement on some of the landscape of the training content that we're launching in the fall. And then as we were beginning to build towards what was supposed to be the training program, we landed in the midst of a pandemic and then a near simultaneous, massive increase in uprising. Which led to our COVID care response programming, really, which was a sort of meant to be a rapid response set of care providers that were able to provide really more peer-to-peer to support for folks one-on-one for no cost into the community. And that still continues right now. There's a team of folks that are directly engaged still with providing that care. Folks can access a Google form from our website and wherever we post it, and to access that resource throughout the various layers of distress that many people are feeling in this moment. And in many ways, it follows the continuum of what TRACC was intending to do. And also it was an unintended kind of flashpoint that we didn't necessarily expect to be needed the way it was needed right now, but I've been very glad as a community to be able to provide that support back into folks that need that kind of care in this moment. And then in June, we started this one-on-one training series, which just completed at the end of June, which was 5 sessions, series of webinars, going over some of the general concepts that we would then dive deeper into in the training program, but also as a means of sort of mass offering something that could meet immediate needs of folks, both who might have increased interest in this area of need in this uprising moment, and also folks that were like already heading out every day, you know, to do frontlines things, often maybe annexed from larger networks of support, to be able to provide something that sort of supported community across a continuum. And that leads us to the launch of the Healer Training Program in September of 2020. And again, just to review our sort of overarching methods of support for practitioner in the community right now has been the one-on-one virtual support, practitioner education, community care, and education. And now I'm going to get more specifically into the training program. So this is, as you'll see, it says Movement Trauma Healer Training Program Level 1. I'll explain a little bit what that means in terms of what is Level 1 and Level 2 a little bit more later, but generally Level 1 is really overall for folks that feel like it's going to help them to understand, engage, and dig deeper in movement trauma, movement experience, and healing response across a continuum of need within movement. The Level 2 program, which is intended to launch in the spring, is really meant for folks that want to do more intensive work in a sort of smaller cohort experience around mobilizing crisis response teams that actually could work together to collaborate to respond to crises as needed in movement in various spots of need. And so really this is the entry point for everyone is Level 1. Level 2 really is for this sort of smaller cohort, specifically around folks that want to dig deeper in the crisis response piece, with the knowledge that many people that might be interested in doing this work may never end up in a crisis response kind of mode or moment. And so both the main training program is useful for everyone, and for those people that are wanting to dig deeper, there'll be an option to do a bit more of an intensive cohort learning in the spring with the second program for those that want to follow up Level 1 with Level 2. This is a brief overview. We're going to get into the details of all the parts of the program. So this is just my entry point into explaining the basics of the program details, which are also on our website, as well as the registration page for the course, which will actually, I'll be able to show you in a little bit how the actually online learning platforms function and how you'll utilize them if you take the course. But it's going to be 12 weeks, so 3 months in length, self-paced within each week, and I'll explain what that means. A lot of people have been asking, what time does the class start? It's self-paced, which means you're going to have a lot of autonomy into how you engage with the content, and I'll explain more what that means upcoming. The overall cost for the program is $250, but we also understand and really want to engage as many folks that want to in the program. So we do have 3 even discount codes, which are directly available from the registration page, which are for $50, $75, or $100 discounts, which is our kind of way of creating a sliding scale way for folks to be able to select what they're able to sustain for themselves. And then also there's an option for folks to both sponsor the training fees for someone else by buying a gift card through the school, which I'll also, when we go into the school web page and all of that, I'll kind of show you the landscape of everything on the website. And as well, there'll be an option then for folks to have full scholarships. We'll have a limited number of full scholarships for folks. And if that's something that you're interested in, we'll give you the contact information at the end of this session to reach out to us if you have need for a full scholarship. So what is included in this 3 weeks of learning is 12 1.5-hour main course modules. So those are recorded video trainings that will launch every week. And I'll get more into the sequence of each week and how that all flows. But every week on Tuesdays, a new course module will launch, which means it will then be accessible for you to click on and access. And we will go into, when we go into the website, I'll show you where you would click on and access each week's materials once you registered for the program. And it's a building process. So each week you would do the material for that week to equip you to have access to the materials for the next week. So you sort of move in the rhythm of week to week. But since the videos are, since the trainings are video recordings, you also get to decide. It's every course material every week launches at noon Central Time, but you can decide to watch it whenever you want. So if that's midnight on Thursday or it's 6 a.m. on Saturday, because those are your only free times, you decide within any given week when you actually want to view the content for that week. We also have 3 1 to 1.5 hour focus session modules, which are also video training sessions, which are essentially extra sessions that are fit into various weeks that focus in on core areas of sort of competency, awareness, consciousness that we want people to really hone in on. So you have the 12 main course modules and the 3 focus session modules. So 15 altogether of these modules over the course of these 3 months. For those that complete all of the material for level 1, you will receive you'll receive a certificate of completion, and also with that certificate of completion, it awards you 4 international CEU units. So the School of Global Citizenry, who is our sort of host for the course, for this course, has certification to authorize offering these international CE units. What I will say about that, because I know everybody has their own credentialing body, because these are international CEU credits, what I would suggest is if you want to know if they qualify for your specific area of practice in your specific state, you usually have to contact directly and make sure that they are, like, say you're working towards your CEs that you need for that year or to your cycle for your licensure. You usually have to just double check with in-state certification across fields. Some are different than others in different states, in different areas of licensure, and different areas of practice. So I would just say you are awarded these when you complete all of the materials for the course, but also be sure to check with your whoever it is that you might need to submit CEUs to, just to confirm that they're usable for your area of practice and your area of where you're practicing in the world. And then again, the advanced level training 2 would follow spring 2021 for folks that want to go deeper into that front lines and crisis response work. Who is it for? So that's asked a lot. Well, I will say that I'm not limiting it to the criteria of these professions, but these are sort of generally, if you want to think about the scope of practice that we're sort of speaking into, social work and mental health, medical and allied healthcare, integrative and holistic health, yoga teachers, body workers, somatic healers, spiritual care providers, public health professionals, nonprofit professionals, folks in crisis intervention, and first line responders. That sort of flows across a continuum of what we could say falls into the categories of healing provider. But also, if you're not directly listed here, it doesn't exclude your area of practice or your reason for being interested in this. But again, we are focusing the training towards folks that are practicing in some field in which they would be able to provide healing care, or are already doing it as part of their community function within their nonprofit or their organization or their community, to folks in movement space. So I want to go over some of the core dimensions of learning before we get into what does it look like for a week in the life of the program. So I highlighted these as 5 sort of core dimensions of the learning experience for this program. So first, core is the recorded video teaching content. So that will be from a continuum of 20 plus practitioners across the country doing various different kinds of work, honing in on various modules of learning throughout this continuum. So you get to learn from a scope of professionals doing all kinds of work in all kinds of wonderful ways that we'll go through some of the course content more closely when we look at the course website page. But the video teaching content is really one of the core components of this learning continuum. Then secondarily, there'll be a Slack channel reflection space. And what that means, if you haven't used Slack before, it's kind of like a message board system, you know, similar to like, kind of similar to a Facebook group, kind of similar to a chat sequence, kind of similar to conversation boards that you might find in academic learning spaces, somewhere on that continuum. And so it's this kind of setup where somebody posts something and then people post responses. The way that we're going to utilize it for the course is kind of similar to the ways that people use discussion boards in academic spaces. And what that means is every week when you have your recorded teaching, that will be followed with a reflection prompt. So something that will be a question or something to reflect on based on the teaching material for that week. And that will be offered up in your main learning space, which we'll look at in a little bit. That's going to be your virtual learning space. So you'll be able to see what the question is, and then you'll click on the Slack channel for that week in which you'll respond to that reflection. And after you respond to that reflection for yourself, you'll wait till other students also respond throughout the week. And then you'll give some other kind of response or reflection or resonance to at least 2 other students in the learning community on their posts. So if you've taken online courses or courses that use online platforms, you might notice that this is sort of a common sequence in creating discussion and conversation in virtual learning space. It's a way for you to reflect on what you've kind of learned or studied that week, and also a way for you to connect specifically around the course material and what that means related to your work and your life with other students that are in the program. And again, the great thing is because all of this is virtualized and it's in this discussion board landscape, you can also do it at midnight on a Thursday or 6 a.m. on a Saturday. Either way, you'll still be in discussion with everybody else who's also responding wherever they are in their time zone with their capacity throughout the week. So it's a way to build really a learning community where you get to share in conversation with each other. And also it's a sort of key component of the learning experience for the course as a whole. A third space where you'll be able to connect, that will be less about the course content specifically and more sort of expanding beyond that, will be our face group. We'll have a Facebook group that will be a private Facebook group for students in the program. And that'll be space where you really get to show up and just, let's say it has nothing to do with the course material for that week, but you're like, I've just been thinking about doing this thing in Minneapolis. I've been thinking about I'm starting this project in, you know, California, in Oakland, California, and you want people to give, you know, you just want to build community, ask questions, see what people are thinking in general, be in conversation with the community of learners, but beyond, and this sort of building community beyond just assignments and feedback. This is a space where folks can just kind of connect point blank throughout the course. And then we'll also, along with that, have a weekly newsletter, which Enrique is going to be working with me on, which will send you potentially additional things. It might be a resource that we found that we thought might enhance your learning for that week. It might be any kind of additional offerings that we might be doing in the community of TRACC, but it'll kind of give you just like weekly updates for the community at large. So that third section is kind of a way outside of just the learning continuum for you to get additional resources and additional community building. And then number 4 is the live Zoom calls. So these are not mandatory for the course, but we will host one each month, which will include some of the teachers from the training program, and we'll also include whoever wants to come and is able to join us during those live periods. We will record them and make them available just within the students. That won't be a public offering, but just for folks that maybe couldn't make it but want to hear what happened in the conversation. And this is the space where we get to see each other's faces and we get to talk in real time, and we get to move beyond just the kind of recorded content and virtual conversations into something, or text conversations into something that is more interactive in real time. So we'll have one each month during the course of the program. And then the 5th level of engagement is the experiential learning project. So that will be during the course of the 3-month program, and there'll be a whole video just on this project as part of the course information, so that as you prepare for the course, there'll be much more in explaining this in detail. But throughout the 3-month program, each student will select an experiential learning project where they'll spend 5 hours of their time engaging in some aspect of movement healing, context, or work during the program. Now that can be a wide continuum because again, we've seen people are in very different spaces and places. So for some, it might just be engaging with movement community where you are. For somebody else, it might be building on an existing project you're working on. For someone else, it might be, moving forward into more deep engagement where you already are. It'll be, you sort of tailor it to where you are, but it's a way for you to have interactive experience that is outside of the classroom, but connects back to what we're doing in this training landscape together. And then your closing assignment will be a 2-page reflection on this experience. And the one thing I want to note, both for reflections in Slack, for conversation, and even for this experiential learning project, while it says 2-page reflection, I am so against there being only one way for people to relay information. And for many people, writing is not their thing. So anything that's written as an assignment or an assignment that's meant to be written can also be responded to via video or audio. So it can be equivalent to a 2-page reflection that can also be a video recording or can be an audio recording. And the same will go for all of the Slack channel responses, because I really feel like the ways we engage our ideas are different. And so the ways that you may want to engage with this material may be different. And we'll talk a little later about accommodations in terms of beyond that as well. So those are the 5 key components that I think are important to highlight as the means with which we will connect with each other and connect with the content throughout the program. And I want to pause here just to see if there's any questions up to this point that seem to be rising up that anybody notices.
Related to the responses, someone asked, were there going to be specific deadlines for initial responses to the reflection prompt to ensure adequate time to respond to others?
Yeah, so it's a bit of, the way it works with the reflection spaces, we try to give people a lot of latitude, especially knowing in the first couple of weeks, folks are going to be kind of catching up. Ideally, within the first half of the week, you would have submitted your first reflection so that way other people can see it by the second half of the week and make their responses. So within the first 3 or 4 days, ideally, most folks have made their response so that by the second 3 or 4 days, everyone else can be in conversation with each other. That makes it the most engaged and interactive version possible. So that's sort of the aspirational goal, with the understanding that particularly early on, people are getting adjusted to the platforms of learning and there's going to be a learning curve. And so there's nothing hard and fast that says like it doesn't count as an assignment completed if it's not done in that first week. It's just the most ideal way to stay connected with the community throughout. And I would say, I would even urge, even if you only have a chance to watch part of the teaching content, or look at a piece of a resource, even if you can engage with the community in real time in some way, I think it just enriches it for you as a student. Having taught this kind of way before and within the School of Global Citizenry in this modality, I think folks you lose something for yourself when you don't get to talk to other people while you're a live cohort. And I was going to explain in a second, but you can continue the content after the 3 months. So that's also why I say, even if you can keep up with some of it, it just gets you like your toe in, you don't lose access to it at the end of the 3 months. So essentially it's in real time for those 3 months, which means the teachers are engaged in real time, our Zoom calls are in real time, our Slack channel is in real time. That's when like the density of people are kind of going to be congregated, but you can continue with the content for the next 3 months after that if you want to. So my suggestion is do your best to be engaged in real time with the community of learners, because you won't get that back in that exact way again later. And also don't push yourself like, I couldn't get through this, I couldn't do this. If you can just get bites of things as you go along, you also, if that's all you can do, obviously if you can watch all of it, if you can access all of it, engage with everything, amazing. But if you can't, for all the reasons that we know life is busy and all the ways that we have no idea what the next, or what September to November is going to look like in the landscape of this moment, of this 2020 world we're living in, just in what way you're able, right? In whatever way you're able to engage. I think the connection with other folks has been the thing that people enjoy the most in this kind of learning. And so just, you know, keeping with the continuum enough that you can do that. So that's sort of a long answer, but I think an important question in terms of time. One of the other rule of life, actually the very first rule of life in my organization, Mystic Soul, is rhythm over time. We can oppress ourselves with the function of time when we become so overwhelmed by it and so frozen by it that and feeling like we're obligated to time. And I would say the function of a program like this, its deficit could be, it can feel like you're contractually obligated somehow to this kind of timeline in a very specific way. But my suggestion is with gentleness and generosity to yourself, if you're participating in the program, do what you can, be okay with what you can't, know that you can come back to material at any time, and that people really enjoy generally the community engagement. So any way that you can connect with others throughout the live process, those first 3 months, really will, I think, just enhance your ability to build community with folks that you probably want to be connected with anyway, you know, that are interested in this very specific similar thing. So thank you for that. That's an important question. So the core course content, I'm actually going to go into the main course page now. So I talked about the Slack channel. So there's a Slack channel, and then there's also going to be the main core course content and curriculum space. So I actually want to take you into that for a second, because I think it can feel intimidating, and I don't want it to. So we are going to go to this website page, and actually I will, hold on, before I share, I'm going to share the link. Oops. Sorry, slow. I'm going to share the link here. So if you are inclined and you want to, I'm sharing the link in the chat. You can click on it as well. So you can be looking at it on your screen while I'm also looking at it on my screen if it's helpful. So we're going to go to the main page. So when you when you click on this page, this is sort of the central opening page for the course. And it's also the registration page for the course. So this is the space where you'll see, here's how much it costs, here's how to enroll. It's also where you'll see this sort of home page for the course, is where you'll see all the general information that everybody who's in the course or isn't in the course, when they show to this web page, it gives them the general information on the program, general information on TRACC. Once this webinar is done, actually, we'll have a link on this page where folks will be able to click and view the webinar and get all this information about the program. And our sort of growing list of staff and teachers are on here. So you'll be able to check and see who actually is teaching in this program. And that will continue to grow as we get closer to the start and get everyone's information up there. So you'll see right here, right below the header for the program, you can see there's tabs. So the overview page is this general one that everyone sees. And next to it, it gives some of the kind of general breakdown. How long is the course? How many sessions are there? That kind of thing. The main important page is going to be, and once you have signed up for the course, you'll be able to log in over on this upper right-hand corner. And so that's going to give you a different level of access. You're no longer just going to have the main view access. You're going to be logged in as a student, which is going to give you access to all the course materials. And so once you're logged in, every time you come in, when you click on this second tab, curriculum, on the course materials, everyone that views can see these different areas of course materials. And you'll see if I hover over one of them, it will light up. But only people that are registered for the course will have access to all of this course content. Prior to starting the course, we'll have a couple of these which will kind of be viewable to anyone so that somebody would actually be able to click on it if they were just coming to the page, maybe the welcome, some of the basic information. But 99% of this information is only going to be viewable to you and clickable to you once you are registered for the course. And so you'll see here we have different sections for the course continuum. These first two are really informational. And so each of these videos may not be long. Some of them are like 10, will be like 10, 15 minutes long, but they'll just be kind of introductions to different elements of the program that will give you a little bit more in-depth view. So things like the welcome to the team, community ethics, trauma and self-support, how to contact us as a teaching team and a community. And then some of the basics on the overview of the program and the learning spaces, which will also include important links to the Facebook group and to the Slack channel that you'll have access to throughout the program. We're going to have a recommended reading and resources list, which will be fully developed before you start the program, but we may also have additional resources each session that the teacher of that session might add some things to that week additional to our main resources. And then once we get past this introduction, you'll see foundations. So this is the beginning of actually the course content. And even anyone for now, even if you're just still interested in the program, you're not signed up, can see every single week and what the content is. So you could actually see the whole program and how it's built out and what kind of material, what kind of content you would be learning each week. So you'll see here in this foundation section, we have week 1, history and lineages of healing movement. Week 2, organizing and activism basics for movement healers. Week 3, the movement cycle, a deeper dive. And then we have one of our focus sessions where I said we'd be honing in on a specific topic that we think is critical for everyone's awareness as practitioners. And for the foundation section, which is 3 weeks in length, there's going to be an additional session that's going to focus on disability consciousness and movement healing care. And so you'll see the flow. Week 1, which would be September 1st is the day that the program launches, which is a Tuesday. So by September 1st at noon, that's when week 1 becomes activated, which essentially means it will go live and you'll be able to, by noon Central Time, click on this and see the video teaching for that week. Once you've clicked on and opened that video teaching, it doesn't track whether you've watched the whole thing, but once you've opened that, it will then give you access to view the reflection assignment for that week. And then you'll have a link to the Slack channel in that course material that will take you directly to where you would be filling out your reflection assignment for that week. And so as you see, that's like sort of the simple flow that just moves throughout each section, each week of this program. Each section, so section 1 is foundations, has 3 weeks. Section 2, which is anti-oppressive and decolonial frameworks and healing, also has 3 weeks of program content and a focus session at the completion of those 3 weeks. And then the trauma and grief ritualized healing, also an additional 3 weeks with a focus session at the end of that. And then 4, which would be the last 3 weeks, focuses on building a network of care, moving deeper into that content and closing out with the experiential learning project and information on folks, how folks submit that. And then we have some closing reflections, the course evaluation and certificate information for students. So once you've completed all the materials for the course and the course evaluation, that's when you receive your certificate. So for folks that are doing it in real time, that will happen at the close of the 3 months. For folks that continue on to complete the materials after, that will then happen sort of on a rolling basis whenever you complete the course material. So any questions on this? This is the main portal where you're going to be able to access everything for the course once you're registered and signed up. But even now, as somebody who's not signed up, you'll still be able to see all of these tabs and view all the content. You just won't be able to, actively engage with content that isn't open for public view. Questions?
Do you want just questions on just specifically what we're focusing on now or general?
Either one.
Okay, we have a couple. As far as when the course begins and whether there is a deadline for registration.
So the deadline technically is day one of the class, but usually we're pretty, with my other course, I'm pretty lenient as well. Like, so if somebody finds out about it or for whatever reason, they just forgot to do it by day one, usually leave like 5 day, kind of into the first week of the course, additional days about to let additional people in. But ideally, you're going to want to sign up before or by day one, because that gives you the ability to kind of get, view some of the materials about the welcome and the information about the program, so that you feel like you're settled by the time the first course content launches.
Great. We also had a question about whether there'd be a possibility to use the arts as a response to the reflections.
Yes, anything that you can share that can be shared, right? In the sense that, yes, if it's an artistic response, absolutely, you would just then share that in the Slack channel. And actually, I'll go to the Slack. I'm going to go to Slack right now. So you'll, if you haven't been in Slack before, this is generally what it looks like. I'm logged in right now to Slack as myself, but this is under the Movement Trauma Healer Training course information. So you can see right now there's just a handful of people sort of listed here, and that's just because that's us as the staff team, and then the folks that are the support from the School for Global Citizenry. In this space is also the way that you connect with the School for Global Citizenry staff through this SCG tech support link. If you have questions about tech, they actually are really great. If you're having something that's a troubleshooting problem around getting into, say, the course curriculum material, or to getting familiar with something in Slack, if it's a technical question, they're actually available and the primary people to assist with tech for the course. And once we get started, there'll be in these channels, there'll be additional information like week 1, week 2, week 3. And so that's where the conversations would happen with us as a community. And so again, like a message board, the chat, the message gets written here. And what I do at the beginning of every week is I post the assignment information as well in that week. Just, it'll be up in the curriculum information for the week, but I also repost it here. And then everybody just replies in this thread and replies to each other, on each person's response. But I wanted to give you a general gist of how Slack works and how it looks. But as you'll see here, there are ways to attach a file, to add a link. So if there, whatever way that you have to create your responses, as long as there's a way for you to share it with us in this Slack channel format with the community, then that's your method. That's fine. So that's a great question. Anything else?
Can you share some other ideas about what the experiential learning project might look like for a new healer who is not yet involved in movement work?
Yes. So, and I think that could be a number of people, engaging in this course material, and we'll be available. I'll be available. Some of the other teacher trainers will also be available to be in conversation, if it's something that you feel like you need to talk through a little bit more. But what I will say generally is that if you are somebody brand new to doing healing work and movement, your project likely isn't going to be, I'm going to show up on the front lines and start a new project for a thing, right? It's going to be the very entry point of engagement. So what that might look like is you're going to start, connecting with movement-based community organizations in your area, getting connected with who, it may even be a project of research at first, who is in your area, what is going on, who can you connect with? Maybe there are other healers that are already engaged, which also may mean building relationship with folks that are already engaged in movement, so you can find out who else in your community is doing that kind of work. So it may not look like something that is super interactive for maybe 2/3 of the project. If you're starting from the beginning, it may be densely finding the resources of who's in movement and who's doing maybe the healing work in movement, if there are folks in your community already, and then building relationships. So on our webinar series, we really emphasize over and over again, relationship is the key component to doing any of this work. That you can't just show up and say, I'm going to offer you this thing when you have no relationship with community. Don't know if it's already being done. Don't know if that's what people want. So building relationship is the key component. So I would say the research towards building relationship and relationship building could easily be a 5-hour experiential learning assignment for somebody just starting out. And when I do some of the training information, I'm going to do some introductory experiential learning. There's going to be a whole web, not really full webinar, but there's going to be a whole video just on that, where I'm actually going to go through. If you're in this place, these might be some things you can do. If you're in this place, these are some things that you might do. So also don't be worried you need to craft it from scratch yourself. I'm going to make a whole 15-20 minute video that's literally going to go through, based on where you are, these are some ways that you might take on this assignment. But thank you. That's also a great question. I am going to stop sharing that, and I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint so that I can just finish up some of the last bits of content I have in here. Okay, so we went through all these components. You were able to see them on in the course material. Also, when you register for the program, you'll get a sort of guide to when your login will come, all of that directly from the School of Global Citizenry. So they'll be the ones directly sending out your Slack channel access, sending out your, this is how you log into the site. And they would be the people that you would, the school's registration process would be where you would ask specific, those troubleshooting tech questions if you have issues when you're trying to just get kind of started with things. So a week in the life of the course. I just want to go through this very briefly. So Tuesday of every week, the content drops at 12 p.m. So that starts as of September 1st, which is a Tuesday. That's when you can view and access the material for that week. You'll have access to the content in order, which means that whatever is point 1, so 3.1, 1.1 for that series, you have to be able to, you have to view that first, and you have to have completed the content and material that came before that to be able to view it. It's on a drop or sort of a drip process, which means that it slowly drips out one bit at a time. So let's say you're in week 3 and you're like, I can't access this content. I can't access this content. Usually on the curriculum page, it will literally tell you, we're sorry, you can't access this content yet because you didn't complete the section before it. And as I said before, you do your learning process at your own pace. So having it done really means that you clicked on it, you observed it, maybe you watched a portion of the video, could have been 5 minutes. That still gives you that still opens, sort of unlocks the next part of the assignment. So also don't worry that, like, if you got a week behind, oh, now I have to watch 3 weeks worth of content. As long as you click on that link or you click on that week's content, it shows that you know it's there, that you've observed it. You can move on and have access to the next thing. But usually when something's locked, it's because you didn't watch the thing, didn't open the content from the material right before it. So the first thing every week when you get access on that Tuesday, you'll view the learning module for the week, which is the 1.5 hours of content for that week. Second, you'll access the reflection assignment in the course curriculum material, which will show you what the sort of reflection question is for that week, built out by the team that did the training for that week, which again is a rotating team of teachers teaching on these various subjects. So they'll give you a prompt of something to reflect on. You'll then click through from that assignment page to the Slack channel, where you'll then reply in whatever way is your sort of medium of reply, and add your reflection. And then throughout the week, you can check back, see what other folks have said, and then you'll be able to do we ask for at least 2 responses to kind of show your engagement with other students, but you can always reflect more than that with other community members. And So you'll see once every 3 weeks, we have a focus session. And that may come with its own set of resources that we might offer up additionally in the weekly newsletter or Facebook group. But that is core content. It's just a focus for each section of learning. So, but that will come it will come every 3rd week. So on week 3, you have your main session and your focus section. On week 6, you have your main session and your focus section. Week 9, you have your main session and you have a focus session. And then there's just the 3 additional focus sessions. The tech requirements. So the key requirements: access to internet, ideally high-speed internet, just for your own connection and sort of capacity. But since a lot of this isn't in real time, the high-speed internet is really critical when we're doing the live conversations, to make sure that you can, that your internet isn't pulling out. And then access to a desktop or a laptop computer for viewing course content and completing assignments. So whatever that might mean, if that means, maybe it means borrowing from someone. I know libraries are not safe everywhere right now for everyone, but there might be a lending program. But if you can have access to something, again, even if it's just for the period of time when you're viewing and responding to your content. So even if you don't have tech device where you are, if you have somebody that can either lend it to you temporarily, or a place that you can go to utilize the machinery, just for while you're completing the material. Maybe you set aside 3 hours every week where that's just what you do. You move through the course material. Access to a headset for live conversation spaces. So that means whatever kind of headphones you might use, if at all possible. Of course, if you don't have headphones, then just making sure, like in all conversation spaces, that we're muted when other folks are talking. When we're not talking is really the critical component. The headset's easiest because usually it helps with your own ability to hear everyone else as well. So that's sort of negotiable based on what you have access to. An ability to complete assignments virtually. And again, this goes to sort of ability levels and people's continuum of learning in whatever medium that works best for you and based on your needs. And then accommodations. I just want to be clear about the program that we were willing and wanting to seek accommodation needs for students. So we just ask that people contact us prior to registering for the program so we can make sure that we can make the necessary arrangements for whatever your needs might be. And we really want to do that to the best of our ability. So you would contact us at info@TRACC4MOVEMENTS.com with any questions regarding accommodations, and truthfully any questions that might also just be follow-up about the program as a whole. And then building community together. So the Slack reflection channel really becomes the way to engage with each other in community around the course material. The Facebook group becomes the way to have wider conversations with folks in terms of community building. The monthly live Zoom sessions allows us to have time and space where we actually get to see each other's faces, be in conversation in real time, hear each other's voices. The weekly training community newsletters will be a space for us to share additional resources. And sometimes if folks maybe have things that they want to send out into the community, if it's appropriate, for sharing, it also might include things shared within the community in those newsletters. And then engagement with the Healer Network, which is something that we're working and building right now, which is really for a community of practitioners to create conversation outside of just the training program. So it will be a sort of larger networked conversation beyond folks that might just be students. And what do you take with you when you finish this program? So ideally, you'll have a basic knowledge of movement trauma and trauma care in social movements. You have a capacity to be more informed and conscious in your healing care practices wherever you offer care. So that means if it's in a yoga studio, it's in a private therapy office, it's an acupuncture clinic, or if it's on the front lines of movement, wherever you fall in the continuum of where your work is, ideally you'll have a more compassionate or more conscious and informed way of providing care specific to this context. A new set of tools and resources to offer continued learning beyond the program, an ability to vision support for and engage in movements and care in your local and regional area. So we really hope this helps you, including the experiential learning project specifically. So it helps you begin to think of how and what way do I want to activate this where I am, and really get involved to whatever level that looks like based on my area of interest. And collaborating with fellow learners and other folks that might be outside of the learning community, but might be even in the wider healer network community. And ideally, it's also an entry point in this work for frontlines or backlines of movement trauma. So whatever orientation of your work, wherever your healing context is, ideally this is a way to open this landscape so that it doesn't feel so intimidating, and that so you can provide that kind of support and care wherever you are. And just a reiteration, you have 3 months for the live, essentially real-time course study. You can continue independently after that until you've completed the materials. If you complete all the materials, including all the assignments and the final course evaluation, then you receive the certificate of completion along with the 4 international CEUs. And then that's just a picture. I thought it would be nice to see what the end, what the end certificate looks like. That's your program certificate, which lists TRACC and the School of Global Citizenry as those who are presenting you with this, and the authorization for the CEUs that you would receive. Okay, so additional questions, anything coming up for folks? I hope that was a good beginning overview. I feel like it's very hard to visualize and imagine all these parts together until you kind of see them in this sort of formulated way, and then it starts to make sense what this kind of virtual learning looks like. Because I know folks come from all kinds of background of, I've never done a course online, I've never done a course that isn't in real time. And our hope is to make it robust enough that it's both robust enough that it feels like you're engaging in learning and you're doing it in community, and also flexible enough that it also feels like wherever you are, what your schedule is, what your timetable is, what your capacity is, that you can also still engage with it. So trying to kind of make the most of what online learning can be.
Two related questions we got as far as, is there a cap on how many people can register for the course, and how many people are expected in this cohort?
So how many people are expected in this cohort is a great question. Since this is the first cycle of this program, I can say, I don't know, but what I can say is based on how many folks registered for this webinar, based on the average folks that went through the entire continuum of the webinar training series that seem to have a kind of level of interest, my gauge is around 100 to 150 people. But we're not capping it there because I want to make sure that folks that want to access this, and because it's in this virtual continuum, it allows us to kind of have some more openness for number of participants. So yes, I would say my gauge is between 100 and 150, but it also could be 200. I doubt we'll go much beyond that. That's somewhere in that range is my just feeling based on what I've seen so far in terms of people's participation. What other questions are showing up? Oh yay, BYP is in. Sorry, I just saw Nzinga is the managing director of BYP, and actually has been it's just such a great support in all of this work. And BYP, for those of you that were on our roles conversation last week, we had somebody from the Detroit chapter of BYP on, and I just want to honor that they're an organization that has really synced up organizing and healing, really been attentive to making healing priority. And that is true everywhere. And so I just want to lift that up.
One question, is there going to be a way for folks to keep track of the assignments that they need to complete, since it's going to be across different platforms? Like, will there be a checklist or something like that? So
the assignments will all be listed. So that main curriculum page that I showed everyone, if you go back to it and look over it, you'll see it says week 1 video, then week 1 assignment, week 2 video, week 2 assignment. So you'll see all of the assignments week to week in that main curriculum page. And then also in Slack, it's not up there yet because we haven't launched it yet, or we haven't added the content yet. But you'll also then see in the Slack channel, there'll be week 1, week 2, week 3. And so then when you're in your Slack chat, you would just click week 1 and then you would see the question and everybody's answers. You click week 2, you'd see the question and everyone's answers. So it should be, again, it's sometimes harder to visualize when you're not actively in it yet, but it should seem pretty like a good continuum to keep track both of what the assignments are and then also the responses.
Great. We just got another question. How will the program cultivate meaningful interaction responses on the Slack channel with possibly 200 folks? Informed by 4 years of online seminary, not everyone's posts will be responded to, engaged with.
Well, and that's what some of the teamwork is for, as well as the teachers and the trainers. So we'll have a large contingent of folks that will be participating as teachers and also staff. And so not everything will necessarily be responded to by another student within a continuum of correct, with that number of learners, but we're going to do our best to make everyone engaged in the conversation. So that will include responses beyond just student to student. And also, you know, I urge people to, I really think the Facebook group will also be a way for folks to engage in a more community, like kind of like the after class when you just hang out, you know, on the front lawn or in the food court kind of space of the learning continuum. And then I see somebody asked about joining the Healer Network. We were going to talk about that briefly before closing, but anyone can join the Healer Network at any time. I'm wondering, Uma, if you could find the link to the Google form and post that in the chat. Thank you. So anyone can join the Healer Network at any time. It's not, being part of the network is not something that you have to be trained or equipped to be a part of. Our hope is, though, that as people take the training program, that we will have increased number of folks that are more equipped and more trained within the Healer Network, that there'll be overlap between these kind of two continuums, and that some folks in the Healer Network are already maybe doing the work in community. And it will be a place and a way for us to engage beyond just a training program into, in general, where are we doing the work, who can we partner with, who can we engage with, what's already happening, to keep those lines of connection and community building growing at a local, regional, and national level. Other questions? Also, to know if you don't remember your question now or you have one later, I will be giving everybody the contact information for them to get. I'll just put the main one in here, which is going to be, we're moving from our TRACC4MOVEMENTS main email. We're creating some intentional emails, but this will be the general email that anybody can use with questions or things that come up that you have requests for. And also everybody who registered for this will get the link to the webinar. So if there's something that you want to go back over, this will be accessible to all of you. And also once we've completed, I'll also post this up on the main page for registration. So then anybody who's interested in the program will also have automatic access. What else? I know it's a lot of information, but I also hope that tried to break it down enough into palatable bites. Yes, and the slides will also be shared afterwards and will also be posted up on the main registration page after. As we're waiting for any other questions to come along, I am just gonna share this PowerPoint one more time because it also has some of, so again, Uma introduced herself at the beginning as the point of contact, this sort of taking the lead with the Healer Network, which I'm very excited for, moving into July. Uma, is there anything you want to share just about your interest in the Healer Network and what it can be for community?
Sure. I guess I can just say briefly, I'm really excited. I think we've seen a lot of interest from people joining these trainings and webinars that they're really excited to connect with each other, which I'm just hoping to facilitate and make happen, and I'm here for any support. Yeah, and I think especially in this time of so much disconnect, I'm hopeful that it can be a supportive way to build relationship and feel connected in this work. We can't do it alone.
That is exactly true. It's all about community. And I think sometimes too, depending on what your area of healing practice is, we can become accidentally very individualistic practitioners. You know, so if you work in private practice, or even if you're a yoga studio and you normally teach just these classes and you go home, or you're an acupuncture clinic, but you just see your patients, you go home, we don't always feel as connected with the community of healers as I think many of us might like to. And so hopefully this is an opportunity to create supportive space for each other. And I just wanted to say, if you haven't joined the Healer Network already, please feel free to. Uma shared the link, and we're going to start Healer Network conversations, which will be bi-monthly. Essentially those connection points, you know, where people are just like, I just want to connect. I just saw so-and-so is doing this here, and I just want to learn more about that, where we get to be in community with each other. So the first one is going to be July 17th at 4 p.m. Central Time. And then the second one is going to be July 29th at 4 p.m. Central Time. So that's a Friday and then a Wednesday. We're kind of testing out to see, you know, days and weeks are not going to work for everyone. There's never a perfect time, but see how that works, and then maybe get some feedback and see if we switch them up moving forward to other times. But they'll be bi-monthly. And so that's something you can engage with now, whether you're joining the training community or not. And then I just wanted to offer this. I'm kind of obsessed with creating memes and graphics. So I made this one. I made this one while I was away last week, which I was not supposed to be doing work, but I just love making graphics. So, and this is very vague, but I just wanted, people are like, what does the Healing Network look like? What would it look like? The aspiration of what the Healing Network gets to become, and part of the reason why this training continuum even can be an entry point into deepening in some of this work related to TRACC and just in general, is our vision was, is there a way to help people be situated so they feel like they have support at these local and regional levels when they need it within their communities of healers, and in ways that we could rapidly respond if we needed to, if there was a crisis in a certain area where they needed more robust support with healers that were willing and wanting to do that kind of crisis response. And so this is just to give kind of a gist of what that larger vision would look like, is that theoretically, if we have, say, these 5 national regions that break up fairly arbitrarily, right? Because the lines of who really is Northwest and when does it stop and be Midwest, right? But across general kind of continuums of where people are physically and where those communities kind of hub around. We have these 5 regional hubs, potentially cities that are more flashpoints where folks might be more concentrated, other areas where people might not be as densely populated with a lot of healers, but still can build community. And imagining the ways in which people could work together to network, to build, to grow at both the local to city level, regional to these regional parts of the network, and then this sort of interconnection to the national resource, which the national resource really is everyone. The national resource is the fact that then at a national level, we get to be interconnected to the wisdom, to the energy, to the skills, to the community of everyone beyond even our own areas. So I just wanted to share that as kind of a vision of what we're trying to think about and build towards in terms of capacity and community. And then I wanted to make sure that everybody has all the information that you need. Like I said, we're building this vision now. We're also building out a more intentional staff team with Uma and Enrique coming on. We're also going to be hiring on an administrative coordinator coming up very soon. But if you want to get general information for TRACC, that would be our info@track4movements.com email address. Uma directly for healer network contact would be network@track4movements.com. Enrique for media would be media@track4movements.com. Myself would be Teresa@track4movements.com. And then again, everybody will have access to this PowerPoint as well as the links and the content here, including the link to the fall program registration if you need that. And we're at 5:20. I got through the whole PowerPoint. We got through a bunch of questions. Oh, Nicole asked a great question. What module are you most excited about? Ooh. I don't know that I can answer that because I'm excited about all of them. There's just going to be, there's so many good folks that are coming in to offer their wisdom and their training that each one, you know, there's magical ingredients in each and every one of these combinations. Pretty much all of the sessions will be co-trained. So it'll be 2 to 3 people that will be in conversation with each other, which I actually love. So instead of just one person talking at you like I did for most of today, it will be, even though the training videos are not live, my hope is it feels interactive in the way in which folks are engaging with each other. And some of these folks are doing the work and talking about the subject in very different ways, you know, in ways that I think expand all of our ability to vision around them. I am, Ellie asked if I'm teaching any of them. I am. I'm sprinkled throughout in a couple of components here and there. The one that I will do that will be a deeper dive into the movement cycle is the one that, if those of you that joined me during the intro series for the movement cycle, I get really geeked out about it. I just get so excited about how I think it helps us give a wide view of movement and our healing roles. So I'll definitely be doing that one again and collaborating with some folks and a couple others. What else? Any final questions before we go? And again, this program, it will start September 1st. You literally can register up to September 1st. I would suggest trying to do it a little bit ahead of time, because when I showed you those modules, the welcome section and the introductions and program overview sections will all be available before the course starts, likely at least 2 weeks before. And so just for your own kind of personal onboarding to the system and the process, I feel like it's much smoother if you feel like, okay, I've been in the Slack channel. Okay, I've viewed a couple of these introduction videos, so I actually know how this process works. You can ask some of those questions before it does get started if you run into troubleshooting issues, both from the school's tech support team, and then if it's more like programmatic stuff, you can ask us. So my suggestion would be like to gauge anytime between now and 2 weeks before would be a good timeline to not feel stressed about it and to feel like you can, you know, be prepared and absorb. Yay. Mary Claire said she registered already. So thank you very much. So glad to have you. Yeah, we have 25 to 30 folks registered already, which I'm just blown away by because we haven't even talked about it yet, you know, and so I'm so excited about people's energy and looking forward to just being in learning community with so many of you. Anything else that came in before, Enrique or Uma, that we need to circle back to that was a question? No? Okay. Well, that's great. I feel really good about that, because if I had done this maybe really poorly, there would be a lot of questions and everybody would be really confused. So I'm hoping what that means is that all of my little visuals maybe helped to clarify at least some of the basics, again, because I know when we're talking about different tech mediums, we're talking about all this content, it can get really feels overwhelming. And I hope that at the very least now, It feels not overwhelming. It feels like, oh, now I get how it works. I get how I could maybe make this work with my life. I understand how I would interact with other people, all of that good stuff. So I'm glad that there isn't too many questions about some of the stuff that I talked through. Hopefully means that it was useful and helpful. Okay, so wonderful. So registration is open now. You can register at any time if you like. Again, if you require using any of the discount codes, that's your discretion. If you need assistance with a full scholarship, email us directly at that info at TRACC4MOVEMENTS.com and get in touch with us about that. We really want to make sure everybody that wants to do this can do this. And we're so excited to be doing this. We're starting in fall. It feels so academic. I'm a bit of a school nerd, so it's kind of fun for me that, we're starting in September. It feels like the school year. We can buy you don't really have to buy pencils, I guess, for this, but you could if you wanted to. You could buy pencils. Feels like pencils, a backpack, a little lunch bag that you could just bring out of the refrigerator to your couch while you do your work. Whatever you like. So thank you everyone so much for being here. Yeah, back to school supplies, exactly. All ordered online because we're not going in public. So is the program open to students? Sandra, can you clarify that? I saw Sandra ask, is the program open to students? Students in what way? I would say 18 and over, not necessarily students that are still in, grades 1 through 12. I wouldn't say it's appropriate for. I would say 18 and over. If folks are already in a academic, higher learning program somewhere, I would actually suggest seeing if you can get some course credit for this. I know a number of people that have gotten course credit validated through the International CEUS at a handful of schools for doing some of the programming through the School of Global Citizenry. So I would say college students, you might actually be able to get credit for it. I would suggest trying for that. And myself and the School of Global Citizenry is more than willing to, I believe the school even has like a form letter that they're able to send to kind of authenticate the International CEUS that's above and beyond the just a certificate. So like ahead of time, if you're trying to get approval from a licensure board or an academic learning institution, I believe they have something that they can send out so that you can send that along to whoever it is that you're sort of asking for credit for. Oh, thank you about my energy and enthusiasm. I just, things that I'm excited about, I get really excited about. So, and both learning and education spaces and co-learning spaces, and also this material in this moment. This work in this moment, I think is so critically important. And so I'm just excited for more people that want to invest in this work and more people that want to equip themselves to invest in this work. That to me is ultimately the most exciting and really hopeful thing for me. So thank you all for that, for your investment at whatever level you engage in this work, whatever level you want to, continue in community around this work. Very appreciative to all of you. So thank you, everyone. And I look forward to seeing many of you in September. Reach out to us if you have questions or needs. You will get an email after this through Eventbrite, which will give you the direct link to the video and the PowerPoint, as well as the registration page for the program. And that should come within, I should be able to send that out within the next day. So thank you everyone. We'll say good evening. I can say good evening officially now because it is now evening in Central Time. Thank you. Uma, Enrique, do you want to say any final things?
Nothing particular, just thank you. Looking forward to connecting. I know there's a few questions still, maybe more specific ones that I'm going to answer right now in the Q&A box. So I'll just stay on for a few minutes and do that, but hope you all have good nights.
Thank you, Uma, for all the Q&A. I see all your answers in that Q&A box. So thank you. I checked it. I was like, whoa, she answered all of them. Look at that. Enrique, anything you want to say?
Just that I'm excited to be part of this community and this endeavor, and I'm looking forward to helping to share the message and information.
Thank you. All right, everyone. We'll see you all soon, hopefully. Have a very good evening. Bye.